Okay, so let's begin. Economic Survey, chapter number 16, part 1. Okay, so today we'll be covering both part 1 and part 2. Majorly the theme is relatively same, which is called the strategic resilience. Okay, so here we'll see what we are going to discuss in this lecture. Okay. So from import substitution, like Indian economy, when India got its independence in the 1947, India started with planning process. And that planning process was started in the year 1950 as the establishment of Planning Commission on 15th March 1950. Post that, after the establishment of Planning Commission, India started with the planning process in the year 1951. Since then, India was focusing on import substitution industrialization. And on the other hand, the other East Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, they resorted on export promotion strategies. Now, later on, we realized that both the strategies are having their pros and cons. But since India invested heavily in the year 1956 in the second five-year plan and 1956 industrial policy resolution, the plan was based on Mahalanobis model. So India focused on basic and heavy industries. Now, if you see basic and heavy industries means those industries that will further produce capital goods so that India can earn in future. But the problem was when India invested heavily, India faced shortage for both these things. What? Both means wage goods. Wage goods means the basic consumables as well as further money for investment. Okay, it's like you have invested every single amount in your house for building your home, but you're not able to do any interior, you're not able to pay property tax, electricity bill, or any other thing. That's what exactly happened with India. Okay, not in the literal sense, but you can understand from the example perspective. Now, here we'll discuss about how India moved from efficiency now towards endurance. Okay, so resilience means like standing firm. So that's the meaning of resilience. When this chapter talks about for the first time that why old economic thinking is inadequate. So the survey opens this particular discussion that the world has moved from efficiency maximization to risk management. So from efficiency maximization, now world has moved towards risk management. It means for decades, economic policy talks about open trade, talks about neutral markets, talks about predictable global rules. Now you can understand the pain of India by following the global order. But right now you're seeing what one country is doing with the global order. Okay, when they are stuck at Strait of Hormuz, pleading for help, nobody is coming because you destroyed not only your own reputation but the reputation of the historical democracy, the country that built on several reputation, destroyed in within weeks, months. So you can understand that survey said that economics can no longer be separated from geopolitics, security, and power. That's what economic survey says. I'm not saying. Okay. So I hope you can understand. Okay. Now we have done well. So what are the areas? So here we'll be discussing. See, in this slide, the slide is different from the previous chapters. Here we will be discussing the sub points because under these sub points, the explanation is almost same. Okay. So robust growth performance that India has seen, a strong financial sector, and healthy investment trends. So India is receiving everything, like banking system in good health, capital formation above 30% of GDP. That is again, private sector investment is also improving. That was the problem in the last decade, that private sector was not like very much convinced, to invest. So scope remains for expansion is obviously there, but here, so government continue to support strong infra push. So this is how what we have done well. External sector current account deficit is manageable. Foreign exchange reserves crossed 700 billion once. Strong remittance flow. Agriculture, rural economy, good monsoon in 2025. Strong Rabi prospects as well. Positive real wage growth in rural areas. Rising rural consumption and buying sentiments. The growth sentiments are there. So urban consumption somewhat cautious but supported by fiscal transfers and lower inflation. So here this is what we have done. Major policy reforms, you can see GST, income tax exemption to 12 lakh, rationalization of quality control orders, 4 labor codes, income tax provision also simplified, opening of insurance and nuclear power to private and foreign participation. So you can see these are the policy reforms. Strategic industrial measures. So investment in semiconductor, which is a trending industry, critical minerals, shipbuilding. Now, export promotion package is also announced as a relief measure for US tariff shocks, supporting exporters. But not so sure about the world. Okay, so you can see that the global economic order prevailed after World War II has been steadily unraveling since early 2000. Beginning with the TMT bubble collapse, followed by China's WTO entry and 2008 global financial crisis. Post 2008 QE, ultra loose monetary policy, so weak productive investment. The idea of QE infinity trap is there. COVID-19 pandemic hit again, so debt burden again deepened. So you can say, since the starting of the 21st century, the world is uncertain. And that's how you can read on these lines as well. The world is shifting from multilateral to bilateral trade. And you must have seen in the newspaper friend shoring, the term friend shoring. So the surge in AI-led technology competition is resource intensive, increasing energy demand, straining on global supply chains. And so these are the things to dominate AI system and copper demand surge. So globally, everything is uncertain. Okay. QE infinity trap is, you understand quantitative easing, Aditi? Do you understand QE? Okay. And so infinity trap means they always say that we are going to ease, we are going to ease, we are going to ease. And they said that they thought about that if we do quantitative easing, that will solve the problem. But that will not solve the problem. So that's a trap. Structural shift as China's Hainan free trade port gradually reshape Asian trade investment pattern. And a business as usual, so global disruptions are there. Unstable interwar period we have seen. So this coming is like almost the macroeconomic stability. So fragmented thing, it means world is fragmented, strategic, uncertain world outcomes. And here institutions plays a very important role. Now the core message, you see QE infinity trap, you see in detail. Okay, here. Now global environment is entering prolonged phase of uncertainty. Like right now also, you don't know who may enter in the war and it can make the war worse. Right now, war is going on. North Korea fired missiles in the Japanese water. China is surrounding Taiwan. अभी ऐसा हाल चल रहा है दुनिया में कि जो जिसकी जगह कब्जा सके वो दे कैन कैप्चर, सिंपल. So there's a high time India can also capture POK. है ना, because nobody is looking anywhere. So that's how everyone wants to engage US in their own backyard, and US has the limitation of its engagement. So India must prepare deeper external vulnerability and build long-term resilience and capability rather than rely on past globalization assumption that the world become normal. Let's see and understand what is QE. Okay. So QE is collateral effects, demand, supply, and market. Three types of effects. Okay. In demand, it's wealth distribution, pension deficit that led to higher inequality, higher saving, stagnant demand, lower potential growth. Okay. Again, you see from the supply side, resource misallocation, corporate inequality, and incentives for consolidation. It means here you can say the supply side also fragmented. So monopolistic behavior, lower productivity, again, lower growth potential. Regarding markets, every asset becoming a bubble. Like if you see housing, they have already experienced. Right now, you can say bullion markets, stock markets. So financial fragility is there. So boom bust cycle will be there. So again, lower potential growth. So according to this diagram, you are here. Now you need reforms plus fiscal policy or populism like protectionism, fiscal stimulus, geopolitical risk. Protectionism, trade war going on, fiscal stimulus, financial repression. We have seen post COVID, geopolitical risk, military conflict, we are currently witnessing. So instead of this, the world is engaging in populism. More monetary stimulus, negative real yields, and that is why the QE is having that infinity trap. Okay. Right now, I was taking a lecture in some of the university. Somebody asked me, sir, how monetary policy is always controlled by RBI. I said that if there is a shortage of potato, you cannot solve the problem by reducing the interest rates. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? So some things are depending on supply side. The problem of potato will be solved by production, will be solved by reforms, not by up and down of the interest rates. Like Vrinda is saying, how QE is creating inequality. How QE is creating inequality. Can you tell me? Can anyone guess? Or by looking at the diagram, can anyone tell me? It is creating inequality. How? Because of lesser interest rates. Lesser interest rates. Remember, Vrinda, if you remember my international economics class, how lower interest rate can cause recessions. And recession mein, those who don't have money, they lose. So inequality increases when the economy is not in equilibrium. Okay. Yes. बेटा जबरदस्ती हाँ नहीं करना, अगर समझ में आया तभी हाँ बोलना, ठीक है. Now narrower and narrowing alliances. So 21st century economy is increasingly shaped by technology, computing power, critical minerals, replacing earlier dominance, etc. ठीक है. नहीं है समझ में. So Sanjeev, what I'm saying is, if you are reducing the interest rates, those who have the capacity, they will borrow at low interest rate. Those who do not have, they will not get loan like subprime borrowers. This low interest rate loan, they will grow their wealth. These people don't have access, so they will not grow. And this is how you can see the gap is increasing. Okay, I have explained in a very simple, crude manner. So narrower and narrowing alliances. So again, you can say the alliances are also shaped by technology, computing power, etc. Here you see copper prices surging demand because of technological demand for building technology. Deepening uncertainties lie ahead. Like for example, China's free trade port marks major structural shift in Asia's trade architecture by turning the entire island into a low tariff So China is reshaping the global supply chains. है ना? So this is how this operates with minimal custom duties, free movement of capital and services, preferential access to mainland China. This significance lies not in a sudden shock, but a gradual reorientation of trade, logistics, tourism, capital allocation across Asia. So country within a country, you know, like special economic zones are for export. So here China also made that, not exactly special economic zone, but a zone where China will attract goods and services plus investment. So as global conditions remain fragile, the probability of major disruption in geopolitics, in trade, in finance now exceeds a business as usual scenario. ठीक है? And Nikhil, what you are asking? समझा नहीं मैं. So India remain vulnerable. Why? Because India depends on capital flows, trade deficit is there, external reliance on energy, fertilizer, and critical inputs. We are import dependent. Risk of capital flight, although we have controls. But emerging US conditions, it's a problem. So coming decades may resemble the interwar period of 20th century, marked by instability but also technological transformation. So the global order is shifting from rule-based multilateralism to strategic and political-driven economic relation. ठीक है? Okay, Nikhil. In this environment, India must build institutional strategic capacity, strengthening domestic capabilities without isolating itself. So we have to get our like Atmanirbhar Bharat on point, but without isolation. Learn selectively from competitors, preserving autonomy, prolonged geopolitical and economic volatility. So Swadeshi is inevitable. It means it is unavoidable, it is important, it is compulsory. Okay. So because of global order is fragmented, and there are frictions. So Swadeshi is both a defensive necessity and an offensive strategy. Both. It's like a game of football. Defensive, offensive, both. So a policy debate is no longer about whether to promote Swadeshi and how to implement it without sacrificing efficiency, innovation, and global integration. This is again all the points of Swadeshi. You can read it. So protection is inappropriate when India is already cost competitive, inputs general purpose intermediaries. It raises economy-wide cost, shields, and inefficient producers. Okay. 8-tiered framework is proposed, like critical vulnerabilities and urgent domestic capabilities. So tier 1 includes goods, components, technology, where disruption or denial of access would cause immediate and severe national cost. Like we are happy that we are neutral and we are engaging with Israel and Iran both. But do you think what will happen when India needs support? How many will come up? So these typically include defense critical system, core infrastructure inputs, energy security, public health, and foundation industrial technology. So again, India has to serve its or protect its own interest. Strategic rationale. These sectors are directly linked to national security. Primary objective is assured availability during crisis. And the policy approach must be that domestic production. Initially, if it is expensive, it's okay. We will support that. But ultimately, we will become self-dependent. So support must be time-bound and disciplined. It should not be never-ending support. So focus is on building minimum assured domestic capacity. Now here you see economically feasible sectors. So quickly we'll read what are those economically feasible sector with a strategic payoff. Number one, here see core objective, scale expansion, learning by doing, and GVC. If that sector checks these boxes, but you increase the capacity. Policy design, you support, time bound support, performance linked support, but you support. But if you are doing good, government will support. Sectoral features, so includes manufacturing sector mainly, and services in India is self driven. Government does not need any push. Even government is imposing 18% tax on services because it is growing automatically. So government is focusing on exports more. So without export discipline, credible withdrawal of support. Intervention may entrench inefficiency instead of building competitiveness. So you have to be disciplined in terms of support. Now, low urgency goods where import diversification is preferable to substitution. Import diversification is also important. Right now, you can see LPG in India. I don't know how many of you are facing the crisis. Can you tell me the real ground situation, everyone? In your city, at your home, are you facing LPG crisis? Yes or no? I just want to understand the real picture. So the problem currently is with commercial cylinders, mainly with commercial right now. Where you have the pipeline, where you have the pipeline, there's no problem. Like Avantika pipeline, it's a very famous. So when there's a pipeline, there's no issue. But when things are dependent on cylinder, not with domestic. Yes, Harshita. So again, you can see, and people are using induction as well. Majority of work can be done on induction. Electric induction starts from 1,000 rupees. Affordability is there, although shortage is going on. So low urgency goods where import diversification is preferable. So import dependence does not create systematic vulnerability. Global supply is diversified and domestic substitution would impose high economy-wide cost. Okay. Policy implication, indigenization in such sectors may be unnecessary or counterproductive. Alternative risk management tools are also there, like diversified sourcing, inventory buffers, and contractual safeguards. Okay. Okay. Yes, Jagriti. Yes, Nikhil. Economic risk overreach. Attempting forced indigenization. That is the risk. You can read the risk. So too much pressure should not be done, should not be given. Okay. So in such case, restraint itself becoming strategic discipline, like dynamic nature of tiers. Goods can shift across tiers. Technology evolves, cost decline, geopolitical condition changes. But true nature of the goods remains same. So again, Atmanirbharta. So here, this is a picture taken directly from the economic survey. Okay. So here you can say high urgency areas, very required, tier 1. And like for example, oil and pulses, fertilizer inputs, APIs, power electronics, industrial chemical, these things. Low medium facility, magnets, battery cell, etc. Low to medium urgency, you can say cranes, industrial machinery, EV drive trains, medical devices, etc. So a new national input cost reduction strategy. How you will reduce the input cost. So number one is competitiveness requires affordable input. Like in China, government initially supported all the businesses so that they experience reduction in the cost, and with the reduced cost, China can China can improve or accelerate its export so that they can capture the market. And the term dumping majorly associated with Chinese goods. Again, input cost act like economic infrastructure. So that's why in India the cost is more. Commercial bills are high. Problem of tariff inversion. So when duties on intermediates exceeds those of finished goods. So suppose for example you are making car. In car you are using steel. If that steel is an intermediate goods and because of tariff and duties it experience rise in the cost, what will happen? The price of the car will also go up. So it's like without any R intervention, still because of tariff and all, losing competitiveness in the market. So shift from sectoral protection to rule based reforms. That's how the balance with indigenization, with cost discipline. So you can read more on that. I have already explained this. Strategic payoff, lower input cost. Okay. So lower input costs will always improve competitiveness. India will get advantage in GVC, that is global value chain. I have already explained multiple times that it is a chain of production. India wants to become the part of it. Generate employment locally. So you can see in the Apple phone manufacturing, Chinese manufacturing phone, who are working, Indians are working. Okay. Strengthen external stability, reduce currency vulnerability. So if your exports are good, if your exports are good, you don't worry about your imports. So this is necessary, but obviously not sufficient condition. Like if you remember, S. Jaishankar, Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, said once that if we want to reduce the dependency on China, it is difficult because for lot of goods, lot of materials, inputs are dependent on China. Why East Asia matters and why is it often misread? Okay, so here a certain portion given for East Asian economies as well. So East Asian economies, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, China, Vietnam, they cited as industrial policy success stories. But experience are frequently misunderstood. Common misreading is like overemphasis on protection, export orientation, while ignoring the deeper institutional architecture, made their policies effective, like Singapore, fundamentally strong. So when you have fundamentals strong, so the real lesson is not simply that state intervene, but how it intervene, how it enforce, and when it withdrew support. It should not be like MSMEs in 1970s and 80s. These economies succeed because they built outcome oriented bureaucracy. In India, bureaucracy is also a problem. Failure tolerance and with learning, credible exit mechanism. So industrial support was time bound and performance linked, tied to export targets, scale, technological upgradation. So all backed by strong political commitment and bureaucratic autonomy. So regulatory speed, cost reduction, competitiveness, all are important. It's not just like you just lay out the policy. You need to reform bureaucracy. You need to speed up your judicial system. Much needed water. So where industrial policy failed globally, it was due to bureaucratic risk aversion, inability to withdraw support from the government, and entrenched inefficiency. Like our PSUs. So you can see all three we have experienced. So for India, key takeaway is policy resembling East Asia will not work without similar state capacity. It's not just the policies and even institutional reforms. I hope you can understand and connect. The common thread, the entrepreneurial state. In order to become India to become 5 trillion, 10 trillion, you need to promote entrepreneurship. Cannot be dependent on the government only. So entrepreneurial state does not replace markets, but actively shapes them, supports them through disciplined intervention. So it operates under uncertainty, experience with policy takes, calculated risk, dynamically reallocates resources based on performance. So key features, outcome oriented bureaucracy. Right now government is running on the same path. You see that bureaucracy is not very much involved right now. It's all technology. Then core insight and relevance for India. So the lesson is not to copy East Asia. These things we have already discussed: state support, exit discipline, industrial policy, bureaucracy, all things we had already discussed. Now, I have made this PPT deliberately content heavy so that you don't have to revisit the chapter. Okay. I could have made these PPTs like bullet points, but in that case, you had to visit the chapter. But here, if you just read the text on the PPT, it's almost the full chapter summary. Okay. So from Swadeshi to strategic resilience. So again, we had discussed this. Swadeshi is the starting point. Produce domestically, reduce import dependency, tariff local content mandates, sector specific. If undisciplined, can create inefficiency. So you can see all things are about how we can substitute the import by domestic production. Now, strategic resilience. Shocks, certain shocks like geopolitical, financial, technological, energy related. So shocks are many. Right? So you ensure continuity of critical supply chains under stress. Simple. So India secured its own rights, own interest. So it's strategic indispensability. The ultimate goal. That's our ultimate goal. We have to become indispensable. That is why India wants to become the part of the global supply chain. If we will become, nobody can pressurize us. What happened in Venezuela? Can you imagine in the 21st century, a sovereign country invaded, caught their president, put into the jail? Can you digest this medieval history kind of a story? That happened during Delhi Sultanate, Mughal Empire. You can see in the modern era, they've captured. So that is why indispensability is important. Iran was different, beta. Iran was invaded. Not like Venezuela. Iran was invaded. Manufacturing, export capability, currency strength. So Swadeshi beyond import reduction. The goal of Swadeshi is not merely to reduce imports, but to build a strong export capability as well. As economy grows, import rises. Even China experienced rise of import during industrial expansion. Imports you need machines, you need expertise. So rising imports not necessarily a policy failure. And the currency vulnerability, it will create pressure on rupee. Right now we are seeing, hard currency is not about monetary policy. Hard currency means acceptance. All of you, please watch one of my YouTube video that is going to come up, where I have explained why printing currency is beneficial for developed countries, while on the other hand, for developing countries, it can become a disaster. So you'll understand this point, that hard currency is not about monetary policy alone. It's about institutions on the back end. So capital inflows versus export earning, both are important. So capital flows are irreversible. It means it can come, but it can go out as well. While export earnings are recurring and rooted in competitiveness, how competitive our goods are, durable currency strength. So that's how. Service exports are necessary but insufficient. They are less employment intensive at a scale. Service sector contributes to GDP but does not create that much of employment. Have limited backward linkages, do not anchor physical supply chains. So these are the reasons. Manufacturing unit, again you can see, create large scale employment, build supplier ecosystem, and strengthen trade balance. So for India, where AI threat is also looming, India should focus more on manufacturing to generate jobs and sustain that. Okay. China's import growth and rising per capita income. So you can see here at this point too, you can see the rise. It's like China was waiting till 25 overs in a one-day match. And then suddenly, batsman came and started hitting sixes. Yes, Nikhil, I understood what you're saying in the chat box. So in 2005 Iraq, they invaded. That's what I'm saying. Boots on the ground. But here it's a very different thing. Vrinda is saying, sir, what about huge capital outflow recently from India? It's not huge. When America needs money, they will withdraw. Okay. It's not about poor confidence in our economy. It's about they need money more. But a forward backward linkages, you must have heard about Jagrati. Forward linkages like after a farmer produce something, they will sell to the market and go to the go down. Backward linkages like talking about soil, seed, sowing the crop, etc. Backward linkages. Route to strategic indispensability runs through global value chains. So this again, so if you increase manufacturing capabilities, it requires long-term investment in scale, reliability, and global integration. So integration in GVC is critical because India wants to become the part of it. Simple. FDI, the quality matters more than quantity. So limited number of multinational brands in electronics, automobiles, machinery, apparel, consumer goods account. India is a big market and I think it's an advantage. We should use it. Importantly, we should use India's advantage of having the large population. So nearly half of the developed countries import from China, originate from China. So you can see how different it is. So they build supplier network, raise quality and standards. Like if you see since 1991, when we got the global influence, how Indian economy also grew. So when global firms scale operations in India, supplier ecosystem develop, export capacity becomes self-sustaining. Manufacturing competitiveness improves, currency strength is reinforced. So the fastest route to Swadeshi is capacity building. Like when you see a poor people, do not just give them cash. If you really want to help them, you get them some kind of a thing like for a thela, for a vendor. So that can work as capacity building to earn money if they are willing to. Majority of beggars don't willing to work. Role of the state. So it must balance three core attributes. Okay, the state. Firmness. Protection must be there. Flexibility, adapt rules, policies, and fairness. It means prevent capture by vested interest, and maintain legitimacy. So here government should become a monitor or a class teacher, should not compete, should not come down to their level. So failure in any one dimension can actually destroy the whole ecosystem. And India's federal diversity is an advantage, not a constraint. It's an advantage. Like different states can specialize in different comparative strength. Gujarat is different from Tamil Nadu. West Bengal is different from Punjab or Haryana. So state broader responsibility include setting strategic direction, reducing regulatory and administrative frictions. So this is how the economy is linked, and state will take its own responsibility. And should not act as like a fragmented country. So achieving Atmanirbhar Bharat requires these three things: institutional courage, policy discipline, and long-term alignment between goals and governance. Goals and governance. That's it for part 1. Now we'll quickly switch to part 2. Okay. Now, if you see this part 2, building strategic resilience and strategic indispensability. So the role of the state. Let's see what it is. So why is state capacity the binding constraint today? And the reason is the era of post 1990 is different from the pre 1990. Right? Like evolving demands of the states. Previously, the state was the part of the business, okay, like Air India, like BSNL, like Maruti Udyog Limited. But now, government role is changing. Government role is now like a sun. And the sectors are like earth. They need sunlight, but they don't want sun to come on the earth. Okay? So these are constraints. These are intent to action. You can understand. If you read it, almost the similar things that we had discussed. Bureaucratic risk aversion, counterproductive regulatory practices, suboptimal organizational design. Now, why entrepreneurial governance is hard? That's the question. Okay, that's important for the exam. Listen carefully. Now, asymmetric burden on action. Like India's institutional environment penalizes visible action more than procedural inaction. So, for example, if somebody is not taking any action, they must be penalized because they are causing delay. So, this makes experimentation risky for the official. And that's how people don't take decisions. Irreversibility creep. Like temporary measures often become permanent. So making it difficult to reverse in India. Anything you want to reverse in India is difficult. And retrospective scrutiny. Good faith decisions made under uncertainty are often judged later. Then you do audit, vigilance, courts, without accounting for the conditions at that time. So retrospective scrutiny also played a very important role in India not become a very attractive destination, especially in the first decade of this century. Then again, mismatched metrics, need for safe spaces, and propose safe spaces for India. There should be mission-based cells, regulatory sandboxes are there, legal protection to good faith decision, independent review mechanism. Democratic complexities are there. Politicians generally, they are close to public sentiments. Bureaucracy provide continuity with the policy. So risk of that politicians drift into populism more. That's why free things, freebies and everything is creating problem. And bureaucracies drift into insularity. So it's like one is very much active with their own interest, another one is not doing enough. So I'm not saying all bureaucrats are bad, but yes, it's a thankless job. It's like an empire. Till the time you give right decision, it's your job. When you do a wrong one, you will be criticized. And a Korean example shows entrepreneurial state activity is built through institutional sequencing and accountability focused on whether decisions are reasonably at time, not whether all outcomes succeeded. Like in India, if you apply for a GST number, there's a deadline. So in India also, the things are improving. I've just given one example, but you have to take action. Learning without forgiveness. Why states that punish failure lose the future? So policies is uncharted terrain and cannot be optimized in advance. So they must tested, revised, and sometimes abandoned. Yeah, you must have seen that policies rolled out, then taken back. So Indian institutions treat visible course correction as evidence is incompetency rather than maturity. So when something happens, we take action. Okay. So creates paralysis in policy. What institutional forgiveness means? And so not leniency towards corruption, negligence, not abdication of accountability. Require clear distinction: what is good faith error, what is design failure, what is implementation failure, what is corruption. That is malfeasance. High capacity states draw this distinction sharply. Low capacity states blur it until fear replaces the judgment. So it means, in simple sense, that yes, some distinctions are there. Error can be done, but you should understand that which error done in which condition. If you do not take any decision, you don't make any error. Bureaucrats are generally threatened about it. Like, for example, when you go to government bank, they take a lot of time to take decision in giving loans because they have a threat in their mind that this loan should not become NPA. So international precedents of learning systems. Okay, so here you can say, you can read about that, how democracy, authoritarian system, post-war Japan, their mechanism, their key features. Architecture of forgiveness required. So these are like in depth, not very much required. But you understand how ex ante, ex post, how these actions are taken, what the role of CAG and vigilance. Legal protection must be there for honest officials. The core insight: in the decades ahead, India will face decision with no manuals. So here you can see the diagram. It means we need to act with confidence even under uncertainty. Now, organizational design and the burden of governance. So architecture over effort. Here you can see the image. So government organizations are growing. Responsibilities are also growing. Complex is there. Lack of resources are there, especially in the local bodies. Responsibility, authority, ownership, they all are structured, becomes primary determinant of effectiveness. That's how India will become efficient and will grow. Limitations, as I told you, blurred priorities. We don't have priorities of tasks, like what to do. Like, for example, if you are writing UPSC exam, you know that solving MCQs in civil services, in economic services, writing answers, some things are non-negotiable. Coordination failure, different units, playing blame games, etc. So need for mission oriented design. The structure must be good. Like, for example, in India, in local city, you cannot tell one person who is responsible for all your problems in that city. That's obviously designed by constitution. But I'm saying that that's how the accountability does not come on one single person. The principle of clear outcome ownership. So in the cluster-based or mission-oriented setups, there must be a clear-cut distinction, assigned ownership, contribution, etc. Lessons from the private sector. Private sector is comparatively more efficient. Even you compare public sector banks and private sector banks, because of structures, the structures are different. Application to the public sector. Mainly public sectors are big at scale, operations are high, at a large scale. And plus, interventions are also more in public sector. So the goal is a dynamic balance. You can see the image. Functional depth, mission alignment, and outcome of the ownership. This is the problem, the biggest problem. Practical application in India. Niti Aayog's state support mission. SSM. So they are strengthening state capacity by certain things. Okay. Like in forming a vision, strategic reforms, knowledge institutions, monitoring and evaluation frameworks. Niti for states also, knowledge-driven governance platform. So Niti Aayog is doing bottom-up approach. Planning Commission did top-down. Here you see state capabilities as human system. So beyond institutional architecture, it is important that you understand how administration worked. So here certain kind of historical imprint also given in the survey. Okay? That is under mission Karma Yogi. Culture, skill, and execution. 3 things. Now we need shift to participatory governance. Jan Bhagidari. अकेले सरकार से नहीं होगा, है ना? Government alone cannot manage. So what is the role of mission Karma Yogi? Important for your exam. Okay, so this is implemented through capacity building commission. Mission is critical for shaping bureaucratic culture. It emphasized not just civil servants do, but how it can engage with citizens, citizen feedbacks. So aim to repurpose the idea of service itself. So learning over static rules, because the economy is evolving, the global order is evolving, flexibility in execution. So again, time-bound governance, but flexibility must be there if that is required. Impact of technology on work, AI and other automation, they're improving efficiency. So future of governance, like we have seen in the last lecture, we were discussing about how administration can also be reformed by AI. Civilization values as ethical anchors. So Indian traditional, we have a duty, then service, collective purpose. So a lot of things are there where India can improve. Building regulatory capacity, schools of regulation. That's what I'm saying. The main task of the government is to make regulations. So human resource gap that we need to fulfill, on-job adaptation of things. Need for new type of experts, for regulators different, for business different. So regulations are important because here government role is changing from like a participatory like a stakeholder towards now seeing as a regulator, as a facilitator. So reforming recruitment of regulatory bodies as well. So we need young talent, younger age, who can implement technology, etc. The private corporate sector and nation building. So this is again current equilibrium. India's private sector occupies a distinctive intermediate position. It means India's private sector is going hand in hand and especially going forward and helping the economy to grow. Three structural characteristics like limited long-term risk absorption. So lack of willingness to invest in long-term global competitors, preference of regulatory arbitrage, protected margins, firm-specific accommodation, over-productivity enhancement. These are the things. Like this preference is rational in an environment where downside risks are socialized through bailouts. And like whenever there's a problem, arbitrage is like we can say a mediator. Okay, Brinda. Short capital allocation horizon, like low R&D intensity. That's a problem. In research and development, the problem is that we have less investment. And whatever investment we have, it's of no use. You know the research. So what I was saying, that preference of regulatory arbitrage, protected margins, and firm specific accommodation over productivity enhancement and learning by doing. In simple sense, that for the risk absorption, government should provide regulatory mediation, okay, so that private sector investment can flourish. Okay. Now, root cause include family control, succession orientation, weak managerial labor markets, underdeveloped long horizon capital. So these things are there. So in terms of short capital allocation horizon, government needs to work on several aspects, because firms cannot function as a forcing mechanism. Institutional upgradation does not require fast courts, skilled labor at scale, predictable regulation. So caution is that you have to see and where the scope is. Limited pressure for state capacity also upgrading. That's why you can see the courts also need reforms. But when you see what happened to NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission, struck down in one order by Supreme Court. That's sad about. I'm not against the independence of the judiciary, but there must be some kind of transparency. So international precedents where business embraced national purpose, like we have seen in our international economics theory as well. Okay, so you can read this. Post-war America, firms like GM, General Motors, Ford, Bell Labs, you see, Marshall Plan, they helped the country. Japan, you see, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, firms are helping the country. That's the role of corporate. Implications for India. Already we have discussed a lot of things. So you can read this. We have discussed about innovation, skills, quality, formalization, institutional credibility, global standard, because under WTO or under European Union regulations, generally we struggle. Citizen norms and social foundation of capabilities. So how citizens are as co-shapers of the state capacity. So it's not just the government, as I always say. सरकार के भरोसे मत बैठो, क्या पता सरकार आपके भरोसे बैठी हो. है ना? So it means you are dependent on the government and government is dependent on citizens. Changing nature of work and value. So AI, technology, everything is changing. Lifelong learning is a necessity. So whether you are like an entrepreneur or you are working as a staff, lifelong learning is necessity. If you feel that somebody is not learning, they are lagging behind. Emotional and physical well-being, so mental health, anxiety, restlessness, like in the information age, it's difficult to take a break. Things are moving so fast. Comfort versus sacrifice. Again, it's a trade-off between immediate gratification or long-term payoff. So new iPhone launched, you have the urge of getting it. So small daily choices matters. Okay. Comfort versus sacrifice. Because people build the nation. Okay. We are the nation. The commons versus private space. So again, public good versus private good, you can say. Public money and intergenerational responsibilities. Freebies, etc. Future generation, burdening under borrowings. Right now you're winning election. But what about future generation? Who will pay this money? Delayed gratification as productive capability. So delayed gratification is not merely a moral virtue, but a productive capability. And a manifestation at the shortcut culture. So you can see accelerated entry into professional league weakens long apprenticeship. And doping violation, everyday practice like queue jumping, informal compliance, unsafe construction. And every year you see during monsoon. So things are there. From ingenuity to reliability. Implication for state capacity. So you can see that, yes, there are complex systems. Citizen must accept a trade-off between delayed gratification and what's necessary. So in this globalized world where consumers has a lot of choices, a lot of decision to make, they are going into decision fatigue. Do you agree with me? Yes or no? Sometimes as a consumer, you feel like you are in a decision fatigue. When I go to buy something, you have decided that yes, I will go and buy this phone. You have already decided that you need a 16 GB RAM, 256 GB storage, you need XYZ camera. You already decided. Then you go to the shop and you see several other options. And suddenly you feel, okay, which one to buy? And then you take, no, I'll not buy today. I'll buy tomorrow or day after. Happened? Yes, comparing everything. Deregulation. So institutional capability in action. So here also you can read, you'll think about that how government is thinking about withdrawing the regulation wherever possible. Okay, so you can read these areas. Not very important point by point, but you understand that yes, government is aiming to identify. This is the very important slide. Okay. It aims include identifying redundant compliances, unnecessary compliance, remove it. Guiding states to amend laws, promoting standardized reforms, facilitating risk-based inspections, digitalizing G2B, government to business services, and documenting best practices. Yes, Ravali, I've just given one example of phone. So these are the things that you can read, although not very important, but mentioned in the syllabus in the survey. So I have added. So there are certain examples, state-led innovations. So land use, Andhra Pradesh, Uttarakhand, building norms like Haryana, UP again, inspections like Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, labor safety, Bihar, Gujarat, Maharashtra. You can see industries are there. Legal reforms, so these are the things where you need to keep in mind. Okay. Impact and outcomes, so tangible results are there. You know, and this is the conclusion. So under conclusion, I'll dictate a paragraph. Okay. So you write it. I hope you are not sleepy. If you are ready, you write the paragraph. ठीक है, चलो लिखते हैं. And that will be the end of the economic survey. Okay, you write. This chapter argues that in a fragmented and geopolitically charged global economy, comma, India must shift from an efficiency maximizing growth model to one that prioritizes strategic resilience, and strategic indispensability. Full stop. Rather than pursuing isolation or blanket protectionism, rather than pursuing isolation or blanket protectionism, the survey advocates an approach combining selective indigenization, comma, diversified global integration, and enhanced state capacity, full stop, by embedding itself deeply within global value chains, while building domestic capabilities, in critical sectors, so India can secure long-term growth, autonomy, and global relevance, Full stop. That's it. Okay.